Greetings, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen. This is Addis Dialogue, which deals with current issues unfolding in Ethiopia and in the region and on the continent of Africa. In this edition, my guest today is Mekki Elmograbi. He's Sudanese media consultant and press writer. He's come from his homeland to Ethiopia, and I've taken this opportunity to ask him to be my guest, where we'll be talking about a host of issues of mutual concern, including Ethio-Sudanese bilateral ties and regional integration and things like that. So do stay with us with the program. I'm Shifara Lako. Thank you so much for joining me, Mekki.
You are most welcome, and welcome for all Ethiopian viewers and African viewers.
Let me just jump right into our discussion. And whenever we talk about, Ethiopia and Sudan, what really comes to your mind is the bilateral friendship, the wonderful cordial ties that has spanned centuries between Ethiopia and Sudan. There may be some ups and downs, but all in all, these two countries have enjoyed wonderful, cordial friendship. And as we speak, also, the two countries are really enjoying this rapprochement. So in your terms, how do you describe the friendship between Ethiopia and Sudan as we speak?
No need to talk about similarities and history.
Yeah.
We spent our time talking about that. I just say that if any viewers from outside Africa or even inside Africa, he cannot distinguish who is Sudanese and who is Ethiopian, because we looks like each other's. We share a lot of culture, and we are brothers, as in Amerindian say, Windimoch. So it's historical thing. It is something in our blood, no doubt about that. And now it is better than it was, no doubt. Now the cooperation between the two countries, the meetings, the relations, the peace agreement inside Ethiopia, the peace talks and negotiation within Sudan, with support of Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and also the peace deal in Ethiopia with friendly support of Sudan. Now the situation is better than it was, definitely. But look here, my criticism that I wrote it before in an article titled "The Devil of the War is peeping behind the door," and the door is half open and waiting for a moment to storm again the area. So how we can chase these evil things out, how we can close the door, finally, no war, no clashes, no tension between neighboring countries and brothers, like what I said, with very simple recipe, the economic integration. How can I have 7 border markets between Sudan and Ethiopia, and they are inactive now? I need active border markets between Sudan and Ethiopia, so the borders will be a mean for, or a tool for peace. The communities on the borders will be the leaders of the peace between the two countries, not the place that sometimes clashes happens. So that economic integration. Now I can say that the political cooperation, the security cooperation, the diplomatic ties between Sudan and Ethiopia is getting is better now, and is getting back to the situation that deserve the two countries to have it, of friendly and brotherly relation. But if you ask me about the economic cooperation, I still say we need more work on that.
Well, that's a great insight indeed. Let me take your attention to the AU. As you know, Ethiopia is one of the pioneers of Pan-Africanism. So as a nation that has never been colonized, what does Ethiopia mean in your views to Africans, to other African nations, and to the entire globe?
Actually, this is my point. And this is what I always say. Ethiopia has double roles, 2 roles in establishing the African Union. The first role is well known, that the Emperor Haile Selassie is one of the founders, the fathers of the African unity, and the African solidarity, and the African unity organizations. But Ethiopia is a source of inspiration for African countries, that when the African Union or the Organization of Africa Unity
Yeah.
born, they were under colonization.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there was a source of inspiration. They look there, the sun is shining there. An African countries with the same skin, the same color, the same culture, an African that never been colonized, and that was a source of inspiration. So Ethiopia has the role of establishing the African Union and being the source of inspiration.
Yeah, yeah. So many say that Ethiopia is also a beacon of hope. Talking about colonization, many say Ethiopia was the beacon of hope, especially when it comes to the fight against colonization or foreign aggression. What's the role of Ethiopia like in this regard, in your view?
I think even the existence of the Organization of African Unity itself,
Yeah.
that was representing the strong will of all African that coming together. And there, most of these ideas, beautiful ideas, were born there at that time, even not implemented. That's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
The economic African integration at that time was just a dream. But now what we see now, the African Continental Free Trade Area, that was born during the time of the cooperation that led by Ethiopia.
Okay, so whenever we talk about also the African Union, other nations' role is also worth mentioning, as you know. Take, for instance, the case of Sudan, your country, and others, of course. So can you also briefly tell me the roles that your country played when it comes to the African Union and the propagations, the ideas that African Union is spearheading, for its implementation? What roles did Sudan play?
Yes, also, by the way, Sudan share with Ethiopia something. Sudan is the last country, sub-Saharan Africa, to be colonized. So Sudan is colonized, but it took a long time for them to complete the colonization. It happens up to 1917. At that time, all Africa already colonized with the exception of Ethiopia. And it is the first country to get its independence after or sub-Saharan Africa. So yes, Sudan is colonized, but looks like Ethiopia in the sense of that the colonization couldn't take it early and went out fastly. That also was a kind of inspiration. The revolution also, the Mahdi revolution against the Turkish colonization at that time, also how to make the culture, the religion as a power of independence and revolution. Also, that was part of Sudanese culture that inspired the African. But look here, also the role of Sudan in founding the African Union, just like shoulder to shoulder with the African other leaders, Nasser, Nkrumah, and Ethiopia at that time. But look here, also Sudan has a role in military and political and diplomatic support, direct support. Sudan at that time had enough resources to reach the armed movement and the freedom fighters among African and to support them, or at least to give the leadership of the African liberation movements Sudanese diplomatic passports and to cover their movement in Africa and in the world. And Sudan went to the extreme. Sudan at a moment, maybe that's something to need to be reviewed. But Sudan at the moment cut the ties with Great Britain because of the issue of Rhodesia. And that at that time was a shock. A country in Africa to cut the diplomatic ties because of other African nations. Currently, the situation, it have ups and downs. Sudan is out of the African Union now. I appreciate Abiy Ahmed, his role. Actually, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, he came to Sudan and he offered mediation. Also, the strong stand of Ethiopia against the suspension of Sudan in the African Union, which is a decision. I see it's unfair because there is an ongoing talks and process. And the situation in Sudan needs African Union to intervene as a mediator and to help Sudanese, just like what Abiy Ahmed have done, to help them to come together, not to move to the issue of the sanction and suspension. I think that is a kind of copy-paste of the Western instruments. The Westerners, they just rush to sanctions, rush to punishments, and that doesn't work. It doesn't work with Ethiopia now. It doesn't work with Sudan. It doesn't work everywhere. And also, this is what I say always to my friend from the West: don't blame African of the Chinese expansion because they are an economic rival for you in the world. Because if you sanction African, what they shall do?
Yeah.
Okay. Some African countries, and even me, I believe in the free economy, and I welcome the countries that they have free economy in the West to be a good partners for Africa. But why do you sanction Africans? The AGWA program of United States, and Ethiopia was a big part of this program. That's a program made by United States to support agriculture in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, something bad happened in Ethiopia, a war. Why do you sanction the agriculture?
Yeah.
No sense in that. You made that program for agriculture, and what happened is a war for political reason, for any other reason. Why do you sanction the Ethiopian farmers? They are not warriors. And after that you come and blame African countries what they have done. I say again, the language, as referring to the question, Sudan has a big role, and Sudan needs the African Union to support the peace in Sudan, just like what the neighbors and the brothers of Sudan they are doing.
And whenever we talk about, the great continent of Africa, lots of things come to mind. For example, take for instance the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the passport, movements from one border to others, and things like that. Some are already showing great progress. For example, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the AfCFTA. Others are a long way to go. So let's dwell on the AfCFTA, and I really want your opinion as to what's encouraging results so far when it comes to AfCFTA, and what remains to be done, and also what roles need to be played.
Yes, we advocate for African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA, and it is connected with the free movement for African, because you cannot make free trade and people cannot come.
Yeah.
Free trade is based on people, they can come and trade and shop and sell. So they have, you should give them the right to move freely, and that is happening now. But if I am back to the African Continental Free Trade Area, why do I support that, and why do I see that it is late, but finally now it became reality? Look here. Although I appreciate the role of the African founders and the African fathers, but at that time the socialism was stronger than the free economy. So the Pan-Africanism is based or composed of socialism. Not all countries, but most of the founding father, most of the powerful countries at that time, the main trend in the world is that the revolution is connected with socialism. So the socialism didn't help the African economy to grow. And the socialism make kind of protectionism, so that you protect your economy from neighbors' economy, so you can't exchange your goods.
Wow.
So that time, or that thing, slow the process of African integration. What change happened? The change happened that most of African countries, they adopted the free economy things. Look here, now there is a real change in Ethiopia. Yes, Ethiopia is a mixed economy or hybrid economy, but the plan or the direction is the free economy. So they are going step by step, and now Ethiopia, they already have entered the era of industrialization. And when Ethiopia enter this era of industrialization, they need markets. They need the Ethiopian-made goods to go outside Ethiopia, and that will happen through the African Continental Free Trade Area. So the African Continental Free Trade Area now is a new chapter in Africa, no doubt, and it is based on a successful experience of the African economic blocks or regional blocks. The ECOWAS in West Africa, the SADC in South Africa, the East Africa Community. People from those regions, they can go from country to country even without visa on arrival. They just go, just like they are moving in the same country. So there is a real successful experience. And the African Union or the African Continental Free Trade Area is basing on that successful experience of the REX.
Yeah, you know what, talking about regional integration via AFCFTA, you might have heard that Ethiopia has started with export, and I hope that Ethiopia will benefit a lot via this AFCFTA. What is your take on that? Maybe if you
I think now Ethiopia, for some time, the COVID-19, the war, they slow the process for some time, but now Ethiopia is back, and this summit now is a proof or evidence that Ethiopia now is back to its position continentally, regionally, and internally. And I think the trade and the export and the import and all plans, there is no lack of plans in Ethiopia, by the way. I know the Ethiopian economy very well, and I know what are the plans. There is no lack of plans. There was just a time that the war happened and the COVID-19. And now Ethiopia can say that we are back.
How should other initiatives such as regional integrations and free movement from one place to other, free e-visa, free passport, things like that, how should they be facilitated in your view for maximum benefit?
Also, we are talking about reality now. Most of the guests, African guests, that they came to Addis Ababa, they came with a visa on arrival. They didn't need, or most of them, they didn't need to go to apply for visa in Ethiopian embassies, or even to make a visa online, e-visa, which is easier, and you can save time. But still, you can collect your visa and you can make it at the airport of Addis Ababa, or anyone or any other entry point of Ethiopia. So that is an implementation, not just Ethiopia. According to my career, I go to several workshops in other African countries. I go with my Sudanese passport. I do e-visa sometime, and sometimes I just take the approval of the invitation letter and go. Now they became more flexible, and I get my visa and go. It is not the ideal situation that I want. I want a situation just like the citizens of East Africa community. A citizen from Uganda go to Kenya just like going to his village. Also in West Africa. At first people, they were afraid of that. No, that will bring criminals and others. But there is a security cooperation. Now we have CISA, which is the community of intelligence and security services in Africa. This community is an umbrella, a body with a secretariat here just right next to the African Union, and they have a strong cooperation with the African Union, and it is based on all African security services and organs. So that this umbrella now, they held a lot of workshops, and they convince African leaders and African governments, don't worry about the free of movement. If you are afraid of criminals, terrorists and others, there is an exchange of data day by day by security service in Africa, who is criminal and who is terrorist, and who should be waiting, put in the waiting list. But look here, that gives the counter-terrorism more power. Why? because if someone want to go outside, he's thinking that his name is not there, he will be arrested there.
Okay.
So that it helps the counter-terrorism more than making fears on the counter-terrorism.
Wow.
And look here, the experience of Ethiopia. Ethiopia adopted the issue of visa on arrival for many African countries, and now Ethiopia is open for a long time now. So, did it affect the security situation of Ethiopia? No.
No.
Because of the CISA and the exchange of data, because of the strong ties and security cooperation between Ethiopia and other African countries, and also because of the strong will of the Ethiopian people and their strength together, and the Ethiopian police.
Wow. Let's now turn our attention, Mekki, to the continent of Africa and media campaigns. Since you are in the field, as you know, whenever we talk about Africa and the media, especially some Western media outlets, we hear that the continent of Africa has been affected negatively by different kinds of activities, especially when it comes to tarnishing the image of this great continent of Africa. And many say that the only way out of this issue is that African nations should be strong enough, and their media outlets should strongly refute these allegations, things like that. So as a media practitioner, what are some of your observations and what should be done?
Yes, I practice media in several African countries for and in the West world in more than 25 years. So I know the correspondents, and I know the activists, I know the advocates, and I know the advocacy groups. I served my country as a media attaché in Washington, D.C. for 3 years almost. And I know how it comes the politicized,
Of course,
for human rights campaigns. I cannot say any other word to describe how a journalist or an activist supports sanction against another nation that put farmers in a risk, just like what I talked about, the AGWA program,
right.
that made by United States and designed to support agriculture in Africa. So what is the relation between agriculture and why do you sanction farmers for what fighters have done?
Yeah.
You want to make them fighters, because when they lose their farms and it affected badly by the sanction, they will move to the war. So that my message is clear to my fellow journalists, activists, human rights defenders. Don't support sanctions against Africa, okay? For the government of the Western world, if you want to use the sanction as a tool, don't blame Africa of the Chinese expansion. Don't blame African of going in the Chinese debt trap or supporting your enemy in taking side in the Ukraine war that you don't like. You sanctioned them already. You said to them, I don't want you. Just go and choose your things. So where is the media here? My message to the media, don't support sanctions. My message to the African media practitioners, you can raise issue of human rights. Yes, we should report human rights violation, no doubt. No one stand against human rights for African citizens. No one support criminals, okay? You should report that, but don't join campaigns that you don't know what is the end of this campaign. The end of this campaign will not change regime. Give me an example of regime that really change with sanctions. No, nothing.
Yeah.
And even it is changed to worse. So this package that start peacefully and nicely with human rights and then go to campaigns and media reports and then end with sanction. That is something cannot be accepted in Africa. And what we need is a strong African Union stand in this issue to support African and to put code of ethics for human rights defending issues and what is the politicized campaign and what is the genuine
Right.
campaign. Now we have peace in Ethiopia. What is the role of promoting for this peace? Where are the people that they are reporting of human rights violation
Yeah.
because they want the rights of people to peace? Now peace is coming.
And they're not reporting. They're not
You are
covering
not
it.
reporting the peace in the
Yeah.
same way. You just make it as a hard news with 20, 33 words, 35 words, 40 words, 50 words, 100 words. But regarding the war, you make documentaries with sometimes with false and
Unsubstantiated
rights,
information.
things together.
Yeah.
So also my message to the African Union regarding that, don't copy the issue of sanction from the Western world and try to implement it in Africa. You should be different. Why we talk about African solution for African problems and you talk about sanction and suspension? Just like in the case that already I raised here, the sanction against Sudan. The role of real friends of Sudan, like Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, like neighbors of Sudan, like all the countries that are Sudan, they came and they mediate peacefully, but they didn't talk about closing borders. We don't want Sudan, we will sanction Sudan. That is a copy-paste mechanism. And some people now, they are practicing that within the African Union, thinking that they are helping African Union while they are addressing their own benefit and their own interest. Because they know that they want to be employee here and after that to go and to serve another master. So that they want to copy his attitude regarding African countries. This is why I raise this issue against the sanction within the African Union system. African Union system is made for African solution for African problems.
Yeah, yeah. Specifically, what is your message to African media practitioners? How should they cover the issues of Africa when it comes to this great continent of Africa, especially in a way that will magnify the positive aspects of this continent?
Definitely. I just want to say, if you want to write about the negatives, it's okay. But is there any lack of negatives in the aim of Africa? Is there anyone said to you that I don't know the dark side of Africa? They just know the dark side of Africa. So you are doing things already done.
Yeah.
So what is now the image of Africa is lacking the positives, and there are positives. Now you have the economic corridors in some African countries.
Yes.
A corridor that a road with a railway, with the power lines, with the pipelines. Now some African countries, it's cross countries. It's happening now on the ground.
The integration.
Integration.
Yeah.
So there is countries with excellent infrastructure. So why don't you give the investors outside Africa just come and see?
Yeah.
Even the investors from the Western world and the Western banks, they have the money, and here's the situation.
Let me make this question final. What concerted efforts need to be played by every country on the continent of Africa for the speedy realization of the various agendas that the AU has put forward, including the Agenda 2063?
Let me here borrow something that I heard in the United States. Africa needs trade, not aid. Okay? Even some people, they are criticizing this slogan, thinking that they want to deprive Africa from aid. No, I think that thing is true. Africa need trade, not aid. Because don't make me the lower hand, the receiver of your fund and donation. Make me partner.
Okay.
Okay? Come to me with companies, okay, and job opportunities for Africa. Now Ethiopia has 13 industrial parks open for investors. We need to promote for that. We as African journalists, we need to lead the media to this, the 13 industrial parks in Ethiopia, and we need to show it in a way that the investors from the free economy countries to come here and to invest in Ethiopia.
Definitely, what a message. Thank you so much for coming to our studio and for giving us some of your wonderful thoughts. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Well, dear viewers, with that, we come to the end of today's program. Thank you as well for having been with us. Until I see you next time with another program. It's goodbye from me, Shifaralak. Stay safe and take care.